Hello and welcome to a Talmud Israeli production. Today we'll review the highlights of this week's course of Daf Yomi study, Masechet Bava Kamma, pages 45 through 51, Mem Hey through Nun Aleph. 45. Kisharo ba'alo b'moseira, v'na'al b'fanav. If the owner of an ox tied it with a rein and closed the door and locked the door in front of it, karoi as is appropriate, v'yatza, but nonetheless the ox was able to get out, to break free v'hizik and do damage. Echad tam ve'echad muad, whether the ox is a tam or is a muad, a forewarned one, chayav. There's liability here. So says Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda says no. Tam chayav. In the case of an ox that was not forewarned, a tam, there's liability. Muad, however, if the ox was a muad, had previously had 3 encounters of doing bad, patur, the owner of the animal is exempt. Shene'emar v'lo yishmerenu ba'alav. Because the Torah says regarding the muad, the liability is only when the master, the owner, did not guard it. But here in this case, Shamur Huzeh, this one was guarded. Minimally, but that's sufficient. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Ein Lo Shmer L'Sakin. Rabbi Eliezer says, no. The only way to for sure guard something is with a knife, to threaten it with slaughter. But that minimalist and even more superior forms of guarding are insufficient to exempt one from liability. Memvav. Shur shenagach et hapara. If an ox gores a cow, v'nimtza ubra b'tzida, and we find that next to the cow there is a dead fetus, and you're doing but we don't know, did this fetus become born, aborted, before the act of goring occurred, or as a result of the act of goring? So the half nezek is paid for the death of, for the injury to the para, and revia nezek lavlad, a quarter nezek is paid for what happened to the fetus. Now, why a quarter nezek? Because this Mishnah follows the viewpoint of Sumchus, who says that ma'amon hamutal b'safek yachlotu, that if there is money about which we're not sure, it could go either way between belonging to this party or that party, we will divide it evenly. So since there's half nezek in play here, and we don't know whether it should be 0 or 50%, we'll do 25-25. We'll split the difference. However, the Chachamim say, no, hamotzi mechaver olav haraya. If you want to extract money from your fellow, you got to bring concrete proof, which there is none in this case. We don't know whether the fetus was aborted as a result of the act of goring. Memzain, 47. Hakadar, the potter, shehichnis kaderotav lechatzer balabayit. So the potter put his wares in the courtyard of another person, shelo b'reshut, without permission. U'shivara behemto shel balabayit, and the animals of the owner of that property destroyed the pots. Patur, the owner of the animal is exempt, because after all, it's his property, and he didn't give permission for anybody else to be here or put stuff here. And if the animals got injured as a result of this stuff being put there without permission, then the owner of the pots is going to be liable. However, if those jugs, those utensils were placed there with permission of the owner of the courtyard, then the owner of the courtyard would be liable for any damage to those items done by his animals. Memchet 48. If an ox was intending to do damage to a fellow ox, but instead harmed a woman, and she had a miscarriage as a result of that. The owner of the ox that gored is exempt from payment for the fetuses. If a person intended to hit his fellow, and by accident hit another woman, and she had a miscarriage, he does have to pay for the damage to the fetus. Memtet 49. If you dig a ditch, pit, in the private domain, but it opens, it faces out onto the public street, or you dig it in the public space, and it opens into a private area, or it goes from one private area opening to another private area that doesn't belong to you, and people are injured, or there is damage done as a result of a pit which opens onto property that doesn't belong to you, chayav, you're liable for whatever damage occurs. Nun, 50. If you dig a ditch, a pit, in the public domain, and an ox or a donkey falls in, chayav, you'd be liable for what happens to the ox and the donkey. Now, how deep of a hole in the ground do you need it to be in order to likely cause the death of an animal? The answer is asrat tvachim, 10 handbreadths. Af kol sheyesh bo asrat tvachim, so too, any situation where we're going to have damage from a pit, it has to be that it's at least 10 tvachim. Less than that, we'll find out. Hayu pachutim me'asarat tvachim, if it was less, 9 or less. Nafal tocho shorachamor, and an animal fell in and died, patur, you'd be exempt from paying for the death of the animal. V'im huzak chayav, however, if the animal lived but was merely injured, you would pay for the damages. So 10 is the cutoff for death. Anything short of that, no liability. But even below 10, there's liability for injury and damage. Nun Aleph. It's 51. Bor shel shnei shtafim. What happens if a pit in the ground, a hole in the ground, was owned by 2 partners? Avar alav rishon velo kisahu. And the first guy passed by this pit and didn't cover up the hole. He should have, but he didn't. Hasheni velo kisahu. And then the second guy passed by and didn't cover it. Hasheni chayav. The second fellow is liable for whatever damage might occur subsequently. Why is this the case? Because even though they equally are responsible for doing the right thing and covering the hole so as to eliminate the threat to the public, still, once a second person passes by with responsibility, that eliminates from the equation the responsibility of the first guy. His action is in the past, is behind us, and doesn't matter anymore. What matters is the most recent person with any responsibility who failed to act. And that person, in case there's damage, is going to pay the price. Everyone have a great week.